So what do I think about Houdini 19 and this Karma release? Well, there's lots of pros and cons, so let's talk about some of that. One big pro is that it does a really great job at large data sets. We saw that with the large pyro plume. If you have oceans, if you have any huge effects with high polygon counts, Karma is going to do a really great job at handling those situations. On the other hand, I do find that the USD and regular Houdini experience is still kind of choppy. It's kind of expressing itself in the little things like trying to, add nodes and then it forces a recook of the entire USD scene as it does so. It's still kind of janky in the sense that we have to have a pop-up to see what our IPR is, and that it doesn't really just happen in the viewport like it does with Solaris. So there are still a few disconnects in the interface between the USD Solaris world and the regular Houdini world. It's not a huge con, it's easy to get around that, but it does add an overall feeling of being not as ready, I suppose. Probably a more significant concern is going to be where all the render settings are located on the Karma node itself. We saw that the terminology is kind of confusing, especially if you're a beginner. You have light samples next to regular pixel samples, and then you have to go to the advanced tab to actually find the minimum, which has an expression, and then, I could go on, right? That whole thing. That's not so great. I really think that a area of improvement is to consolidate those render settings in areas that are similar to each other. The fact that I have to go dancing around tabs to get to basic settings that are used for like determining the samples, which is probably the most important thing you do in that node, is, I think, something that needs to be improved. On the plus side, we do have motion blur, we do have depth of field. I didn't show that in the preview, but that was something that was missing, as well as GI, that was missing in Houdini 18. So now you can say that Karma has these solid features that, make it a more complete solution. If Houdini 18 was unusable, I would say that Houdini 19 is actually pretty usable at this point because of the fact that they've rounded out that set of features. Probably my biggest con amongst all of this stuff is the way that materials are handled. Believe it or not, I find that the way that Houdini does materials is pretty messy. There's all sorts of different places materials can be made. It's not like there's one place that materials happen in. The material networks themselves don't allow for viewport previews by default. That gets kind of annoying over time. Also, you have to worry about the principled shader not picking up UVs. Basic stuff like this. I mean, it's not like there's any deal breaker issues with it. We can assign materials. We have all the amazing features in Solaris, but it's just little annoying things that will take up time in production. And for your average artist, for your average TD, that sort of clutter and that sort of, hassle of it not just knowing what you want half the time it gets old really quickly. And especially if you have to texture and shade tons of different assets and set up shaders. Yes, you can create an HDA and, kind of make your own preset of the stuff, and that's really nice. But it's just a little bit rough around the edges. On the plus side, though, lighting is awesome with Solaris. I'm a big fan of that. I've run into a couple of bugs, nothing big and major and show-stopping or anything. But in general, the light mixer, light linking inside of Solaris is really great. And that was something that was released in Houdini 18. It's here in 19 as well. I still think it's one of the best advantages of working with USD in Solaris. Also, that scene import node does a really good job. I think it's very underappreciated how difficult it is to make a node like that, which can just take anything you throw at it. And so the devs did a really great job on that particular node on this release. I can keep going with these pros and cons, but let me just cut to the chase. From a scale of 1 to 10, where do I think Karma stands? I think it's at about 6.75. And the reason why it's not a 6 is because of the fact that it's free. Do keep in mind that this is coming with Houdini. You don't have to pay any extra money. And the fact that it works and the fact that it's way better than Mantra in terms of speed is a huge win for this release. I mean, we went from probably what was about a 4 out of 10 to a 6.75 out of 10, which is a massive improvement. Is this stable enough for production? If you're a studio and you're thinking about switching to Karma as your render engine, should you do it? I would say maybe, but do a lot of testing before you do. I did try to render out some heavy scenes. They did crash. One crashed overnight. I had another overnight render that just kind of hung on frame 14 for some reason, and it just didn't know what to do. So for that reason, I can't recommend it wholeheartedly for production yet. Do keep in mind, I am working with a pre-released version of Houdini here. So this is not a full production release that you have. However, do at least put it through some tests if you are a studio. Make sure that this is stable. Make sure that you have a system that works before you try to rely on that for client work. That's one thing I can confidently tell you. For individual artists, should you rely on Mantra as your main go-to render engine? I would say yes, if you can't afford third-party render engines. In my opinion, does Karma beat out Redshift or V-Ray or RenderMan or Arnold or any of these other render engines that, you know, have people working on rendering full-time for multiple years and just trying to perfect that experience? Well, yeah, Karma doesn't have that. And so if you can afford the extra cost of another render engine, I think it's a good idea. Again, like I said, it's still works. You can still make Mantra work, but it's not going to be as pleasant as the other render engines, in my opinion. Other render engines are probably going to be faster. They're probably going to have more features. Again, Karma and Side Effects, they have developers that need to cover a lot more ground than people at Chaos Group who work on this 24/7 for the past 5 years, right? And so, you know, I guess at the end of the day is you get what you pay for. It's true for tutorials. It's true for render engines. Sorry to say that if you're trying to rely on pirated software and free tutorials online and free render engines and this and that, you're not going to get as good of results as people who pay money for improved software and improved training. So it's kind of like all in the same concept there. It's all in the same boat. So if you can afford it, I'd still recommend third-party render engines. However, if you can't, this release is really good news for you because Karma is way faster, the features are awesome, and if Side Effects keeps going in this direction, they keep improving as much as they have between 18 and 19, I fully believe that Karma can stand up against the other render engines, no problem. However, right now it's still just rough around the edges. It still feels kind of beta to me, even though it has all the full features. So what I would say is check it out. It is worth your time doing that. And, you know, especially if you have large pyro simulations or flip simulations, it might be really great just to rely on it for rendering out effects elements for the time being, just because of the fact that it takes in so much data really, really well. So I'm not going to say for the individual artists, yes, you absolutely should use Karma, or no, you should not use Karma. It's up to you. It depends on your situation. It depends on the project even. And you just have to weigh your pros and cons yourself between that and other render engines. But it's good to at least get to know Karma because, like I said, the direction they're going with this is really, really good. Besides that, I hope you guys have enjoyed this mini series about Karma. Again, if you'd like to support my courses and what I do, check out cgforge.com. I teach Houdini full-time for a living. And I think that there's something to that, where you get professional tutorials which are thorough, simplified, and straight to the point. It ultimately saves you time, and I have a lot of cool stuff coming up in the near future. So I'm looking forward to that. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.